Thanks very much to Gary for joining us today, Twitter for Brands.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, we've heard a lot today about Twitter.
Before we start, can I just do something?
Okay.
I'm on this thing called Twitter, and I better tweet, hadn't I, at the start of it? So I might as well do a nice picture of you all. I ain't going to get you all in, but I'll do my best, and then I'll post that, and then we'll get cracking.
All right, Gary's loading up the camera on his phone.
Camera's on. Can you look like you're enjoying it? It might be quite good. Okay, yeah, go now. Thank you. 1 second.
Gary's about to live tweet this photo of you. So anyone who's not following, he's at Gary Lineker, and you're about to see a photo of yourselves.
What I usually do on these is forget to put the photo on. Have you ever done that? Done your tweet, ready to put your picture, forget to do it? I do things like that all the time. I'm done.
Are you done? Okay.
Yeah, done.
I was about to ask you what role Twitter played in your life, but I think you just showed us.
Yeah, it's taken over my life, really. But it's become quite important in many ways. I've seen many benefits, all sorts of different ways. From having a bit of fun with various people, to promote yourself in many ways, and also the people I work with and work for, BBC, Walkers, Al Jazeera, whatever it may be at that particular time, and also, of course, to garner information, to get information about whatever interest that you have, whether that be obviously sport in my case, but news as well, and all sorts of different things. So it's I absolutely thoroughly enjoy it now, and I'm on it far too often, for my wife's liking. But aside from that, it's okay.
Twitter recently turned 7, and we brought out a book to celebrate our 7th birthday, and I think some of the books are floating around today so people can see them. You kindly contributed to the book, and we asked you for a list of the people that you like to follow on Twitter. There were some quite personal stories in there, as well as the professional, and a couple of people that you mentioned following were your son George and your brother-in-law Kai. Tell us a bit about those two accounts and why you love to follow those.
Well, I think it's always quite interesting on Twitter to see who you follow, because you can work out what kind of person you are anyway. But it's also quite good for keeping an eye on your members of your family, especially your children, see what they're up to, because they can never resist telling you the world on Twitter what they're up to. It's not always a good thing, but it's quite good. So I put George in my top 10 because George is he's a bit of a character. He's only 21. It's nice to follow what he's up to, and also he's quite funny on Twitter as well. He gets a lot of abuse just because he's my son, for some reason, but he does play up to it. He's quite provocative, and he's a decent follow. He's particularly good at putting away the abusers in quite a nice manner, which is something that we have to do from time to time. So it's quite nice to involve one of my family in that, and George was important. The other one you mentioned was Kai, who is my wife's brother, actually. And this is also one of the great things. This is just an example of really what Twitter can do, is because Kai is actually, he's paralysed from the neck down. He had a terrible accident about 6 years ago, where he was chased by some hoodlums and jumped over a wall, and there was a 25-foot drop, and he's damaged his spinal cord. 2 or 3 years in intensive care. Eventually he's come out. He's got not much movement. He can move his arms but no fingers. But he's got into Twitter, and it's given him a real interest, if you like, and something that's motivated him. And he tweets by using just that knuckle on the thing, and he tweets quite well now, and he's doing really well, and it's given him a lot of interest, which is important because there are not that many things he can do, although he's gradually getting better. So it's a good story. Yeah.
You mentioned George. Wasn't it George that got you started on Twitter in the first place?
Yeah, it was. It was end of January last year. We were sitting watching football matches. It was about just towards the end of the game, about 5:45 on a Sunday, and he was like, I said, "You're always on. What are you doing?" He says, "I'm just tweeting." I said, "What do you mean? What are you tweeting?" "Oh, listen, mate." He said, "You've got to get on it." he'd tried a few times, and I said, well, what for? And he said, well, you can, tweet this and that. And I said, well, what would I say? He said, about football, about whatever, anything you want to do. I said, I don't think people will be interested, and this, that, and the other. And he went, no. She said, come on, get on. I'll put you on now. He'd got about, I think, 12,000 followers at the time. And he said, I bet you get more than me by the end of the night. I bet you £5. I went, that'd be ridiculous. Who's going to even know I've gone on in the first place? He said, well, I'll put you on. I'll tell him and then tell people. I said, nah. He went, come on. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do it for 24 hours. And so he set me all up, and he got me all on. And he said, you got to do a tweet. I went, what am I going to say? So whatever I did, I said, here I am, hello Twitter, whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. He said, then we need to do a tweet now because no one will believe it's you. So he said, go and stand by the computer, I'll take a picture of you, this, that, and the other. So off and running, and then I think I passed his 12,000 in about 10 minutes. Right. And then I felt, about 24 hours later, when I'd got, 20, 30,000 followers, I thought, I can't really let them down now, I better stay on it. And then I got to enjoy it and saw the value in it.
And 1.5 million followers later, you're now an established user, a regular user. I mentioned the Twitter's 7th birthday book earlier, which you contributed to, and in it you described why you love Twitter. One of the things that you mentioned was the nonsense that you find there. I just wondered, I'm curious to ask, is there nonsense involving a certain ex-newspaper editor and now turned TV celebrity, someone called Piers perhaps, who you may have run in battles with on Twitter? Is that part of it?
Well, it's part of the pleasure is kicking his backside occasionally. Yeah, it's quite good fun. But he is very good on Twitter. He's very, he's very outspoken and uses it brilliantly. I just say. But the nice thing is he thinks he knows a lot about football, but he clearly doesn't. So you've always got half a chance of many other footballers do as well of knocking him down a peg or two in that particular area. But we've had a few spats.
We are talking about Piers Morgan, in case anyone doesn't know. It hasn't got there yet. And he's got his nickname for you, and you've got one back for him, which is, again, part of the pleasure for those of us that observe these battles between you and Piers.
Yeah, Tubbs is... And Jugs for me, I've still not worked out why. But.
As a neutral, watching your battles with Mr. Morgan, it feels to me like you quite often get the better of him. I've got a couple of tweets here.
Why are you neutral?
Okay, non-neutral, not neutral at all. All right. Yeah. It feels like you often get the better of him. And I just wanted to show you a couple that I wanted you to talk us through. So here's a couple where I think I quite enjoyed these Twitter exchanges between you and Piers. So here's one. So a tweet from Gary here. And talk us through the kind of the background to the tweet, if you can, Gary, and then I'll show everyone as the conversation develops.
Yeah. I think someone came up with the thing about the fact that I hadn't ever had a yellow card, and a lot of people said, didn't you get one in Japan? And I was trying to put that right there. And then Piers, being Piers, decided to jump in and said, did you ever tackle anyone? Which obviously I didn't, but I used it in a slightly different way, which sort of speaks for itself, I think, really. 1-0.
1-0. And just to show you 2-0, I think this is my favourite one. So here's a tweet from Piers. You, as modest as he always is.
Yeah. I currently air in 200 countries. Oh, that one. I remember that one. How are you getting on?
Yeah. And so Gary's response. Is that 2-0? I think that's 2-0.
It's comfortably, I would say so. He's had his odd victory though.
So those two World Cups that you mentioned in conversation with Piers there. So 1986 and 1990. For those of us who are old enough to remember those World Cups, and I'm one of those, they felt like moments when the whole country came together, in England at least, moments which almost kind of, even if you didn't like football, brought the nation together. What was it like to be a part of those?
Well, being part of a World Cup English side, it's the pinnacle of your career, really. It's the biggest stage that you can possibly play on. And in those days, we had two great World Cups. 86 obviously went to the quarterfinals, and we had the hand of God and the brilliant Maradona goal. and that went well. And then Maradona was this unbelievably brilliant player, and they sort of beat us on that occasion. 4 years later, we played in Italia '90. We reached the semi-finals. We played against Germany, and customarily it went to a penalty shootout. And I remember actually, because people often on Twitter always asking what's it like with the penalties and all that sort of stuff. So we eventually reached this penalty shootout, and I'll never forget that there were 5 of us that were going to take them. The 4 of us that volunteered, and Chris Waddle was stood in the centre of the pitch, and Bobby Robson walked over, all dressed up. Man, great bloke, Bob, huge enthusiast. And he just walked over and he gathered us all round, and he went, "Don't let me down. There's 30 million people watching back home." Didn't work. But great experiences, and you're playing in front of sort of billions of people worldwide, and but it can be a bit scary. You've got to be able to deal with it.
1990 was one of the most famous ones. England got to the semi-finals, the only time apart from 1966 that's happened. Gary, you are the only Englishman to ever win the Golden Boot in the World Cup. You're the leading English scorer in World Cup history. But it's not always been plain sailing for you in World Cups. I've got one clip which I just wanted to show you now. We're going to run the piece of VT, and then afterwards, I just want you to talk me through exactly what was going on here.
Lineker up there, it goes over Moran's head, and Moran must have given Lineker a shove because England get a free kick.
Seems strange that he picks players with flair, and then all of a sudden we've got things like Waddle hitting long balls out of his own defence, where you'd be far happier seeing Waddle, as he did when I think he should have had a penalty, taking men on in the top half of the field, and Barnes doing that. Gascoigne playing in the top half of the field. We've invited too much pressure at the moment.
I wasn't very well. I hadn't been very well all day, to be honest. I managed to hang on in the first half.
All right.
Sneaked a goal as well, so I might as well mention that, the good side. And then I went to the loo at half time, which was a tremendous relief. And in the second half, about, I don't know what it was, 15, 20 minutes into the second half, I was cramping up again. I was in a dreadful state. And the ball goes down their left-hand side, and bringing it back to the tackle thing ridiculously, I went and stretched out to try this tackle. And as I did so, I sort of relaxed. You don't really want to know any more than this, do you? It's just dreadful. And it was there. It was everywhere. And what do? It's the World Cup. There's 1 billion people watching it right around the world. And I remember thinking, shit. So I'm sort of... The good thing was it had rained before the game, so the grass was wet. So I sort of had to pull it all out, rub it in the... And there's one bit on that clip, I don't know whether you noticed, but Gary Stevens comes over and he just goes, "What's wrong? I've got to shit myself." So anyway, and then I'm sort of wiping it. I just tried everything that I could. I have to say that the last 20 minutes of that game, I did get an awful lot of space. But the worst thing was, it wasn't quite the worst thing, the next worst thing was that it was cramping about 10 minutes to go, he brought me off, Bobby Robson. And it must be the only ground in the world in Cagliari where the bench was on the opposite side to where the dressing rooms and the tunnel were. So I had to go and sit on the bench, and I smelt bad, really bad. And the whole of them were all... And I was sitting on my own at the end like that. And nobody wanted to swap shirts or anything at the end of the match. So.
Or shorts.
It was quite an experience, but it's been much fun on Twitter. Whatever I tweet now, someone will reply somehow, bringing it round to that moment. But there you go.
I think you mentioned when you were watching golf the other day and tweeting about golf, and someone had brought it up. It's something which follows you around.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So 1990 had its ups and downs, fair to say, mostly ups. a rare low point. You were definitely one of the faces of the 1990 World Cup in this country, and the other one was definitely Paul Gascoigne, Gazza. I'm often asked, like, if there was one person who you would love to get on Twitter, I think Gazza would be great. He's going through a tough time at the moment, and we all wish him well. But you've had some amazing times with Gazza and some quite fun times as well.
Oh yeah, loads. I mean, he seems to be doing okay at the moment. It's obviously a long haul, and it's down to him now, really. So we hope he does well. I think he'd be good on Twitter because he is very funny for all his idiosyncrasies. He's a great character. He was a great player. I've got 150 Gazza stories, but I'll just tell you one. My particular favourite was going back to a little period when we were at Tottenham together, and he had a little spat with George Best, and it started with George Best doing a newspaper column that he said that Gazza's not fit to lace my boots, and then Gazza responded, well, he's nothing but an old drunk, which is not bad coming from a young one. And it went on. It culminated with George Best appearing on a chat show. I think it was Jonathan Ross when he used to do Channel 4. And he said the problem with Gascoigne is that the number on his back is really his IQ level. So, which wasn't particularly funny, but it was to the boys in training the next morning. So we were laying into Gazza, quote, yeah, thick Geordie this and thick that. And he was getting a bit upset, as he does on occasions. And he's always having a go at me, like, and all this. He's saying, making out I'm thick Geordie. Sorry about the accent, it's crap. And he was going on all day. And at the end of the training session, and he'd been battered all morning, he came over, and I swear this is true, and he pulled me at one side, he whispered to me, he went, hey, golden bollocks. So he always called me that. See, Beckham wasn't the first. And he said, hey, golden bollocks. He said, what does IQ mean? True. Bless him. I once played at Manchester City, and every game that I ever played, I used to have a hot bath before the match, just like two minutes, small amount of hot water, just put my legs in, stretch a little bit, because I was always a bit tight, just to relax, did a bit of stretching, bump out, big warm-up, come back in, get ready for the game. I did this one day at Manchester City away. They didn't have any small baths, they just had the big one that we used to all go in, and I can tell you a few stories that Gazza has done things in those big baths that you wouldn't believe either. And on this particular occasion, I just stood up and I was just doing a few stretches, blah, blah, blah. And as I was about to get out, Gazza came in. He said, you always do that. What are you doing? I said, just a couple of minutes, quick stretch in the bath. It just gets me going. He went, I'll try it. So he jumped in, I jumped out, I went out on the pitch, did my warm-up, which was like 15, 20 minutes long, came back in, walked in, got my stuff ready, got my kit on, before, nipped in, thought, nips to the loo, walked in, there's Gazza in the bath, up to the water line. Boiling hot. I went, don't tell me you've been in there since it's great, feel great. So we go out, we play the match, about 15 minutes in, he's come running, you. I said, what? He said, I'm all giddy. I said, well, what you expect? And we got on half time, we had a big row, he was giving me a bollocking, blaming me for the fact that he couldn't put one leg in front of the other, he was completely dizzy. But he was dizzy, but he was a wonderful player, and we wish him well.
Yeah. Great character. So, Gary, we talked about your playing days. I've put a little treat in for any younger members of the audience who may not remember you.
I thought we just had that treat.
There's Gary looking resplendent in his Barcelona days. So, but fast forward to the end of your playing days, and you obviously move on to a broadcasting career. Now broadcast with BBC Sport, Al Jazeera, soon to be NBC next season in the US. Tell us a bit about how you use Twitter as a broadcaster and the role it plays in your professional life.
Well, I think one of the appeals for me in Twitter is it's almost similar to my work in many ways, in the sense that the skill of writing a certain amount of characters, it's not quite the same, but on Match of the Day when I write the script, it's sort of a short little bit into one game and you're trying to make it reasonably interesting and entertaining, and another short line and an opening line and a closing line. You don't really want to go much past 140 characters. So the sense of the skills are the same. But the use of Twitter, though, it's brilliant for it's brilliant for promoting your TV programs, whichever that you do. And Saturday nights I'll bash out the running order. Usually get abuse from whoever's not happy with their team, wherever it is in the order, and what time it's on, who's in, all that sort of stuff, and just pushing people towards your programs. And I think it's a really great vehicle. I mean, during the recent European Championship, it's the very rare occasion in television that you can go head to head with another channel. It doesn't happen, once in a blue moon, but it happens in the final of the European Championship and it happens in the final of the World Cup. So for us, you can bash out there. We've got like one or two heavyweight tweeters, and they don't. And whereas normally we've beaten them by 4-1 in recent times. It used to be 2-1. We've gradually built that up, and I think it was about 4-1. I think it was 6-1 the last final, and I don't think that's just down to us being brilliant and they're rubbish. But I think that we were getting it out there, getting the message out there. Come and watch it with us, etc., etc. And I think it made a little bit of difference. And you can see. I'm sure it's the same with how you use it with all the the brands here. Mm-hmm. That the more people you can get reading the base, it's advertising. Really, it's a way to advertise. It's not the sole purpose of Twitter for us, but it's an important part of it.
And you use it a little bit to give people an insight into life at Match of the Day, don't you? Pictures from behind the scenes and showing people what Hansen looks like on his afternoon off. And
without makeup, it's a dreadful sight. But no, it's a good. I suppose it brings people in a little bit towards what you do and makes them perhaps feel part of it. And it's I find it equally useful when I'm following people in areas of life that I'm interested in, whether that's other sports or entertainment or TV programs or whatever. But it's I remember when I was first on Twitter after George persuaded me to do it. I remember you follow a few people, and I was one or two footballers I was following. It was like a 4 or 5 way conversation, I think, between the Neville brothers, Wayne Rooney, Rio Ferdinand, and maybe somebody else. And they're all having this conversation. I thought, what a real treat for a fan or a supporter to be able to follow all their heroes, actually having a bit of banter and a bit of conversation with each other, and realising that the odd footballer can string a sentence together.
Who knew? So we've talked about football, but one event which really transcended football, which we've seen you on our screens recently, was London 2012. So we heard a bit about the Olympics earlier, but you were one of the faces of the BBC coverage of London 2012. So what was it like? It really kind of brought the nation together in Britain in a way that few events in my lifetime have done. What was it like to be right at the heart of it?
Oh, it was a real thrill. It was. I mean, it was always going to be huge, but I don't think any of us really thought it would be quite as dramatically huge as it was. And we started getting viewing figures in. I think the opening ceremony was something like 27 million, 28 million people, and you think, wow, you never get that any time in anything. Football occasionally, if England are playing in a quarter final, obviously not beyond that because we don't, but would get around 20. But we were, the figures were incredible, and to be part of that was amazing. And then you got that feel-good factor when the team started to win, and the individuals started to win medals and gold medals, and it just went so brilliantly well, and it was smoothly run after 1 or 2 early scares and stuff. So it was, and to be part of it was not competing, but the next best thing, bringing it to the nation. Was amazing. Televisually, it was difficult because it's the only time I think I've worked on TV where there was no chance to rehearse anything. So we'd do quite complicated openings to the show, and it was, I did the prime time show, sort of 7 till 10:30. And the reason you couldn't, whereas normally on Match of the Day or any show that you have, even live matches, you can rehearse the first bit, the opening line into some sort of musical montage, whatever it is, and then what you've got. And we did these complicated openings at the Olympic with an opening titles, and then what we've got to show you, what's happened today, what the menu is, etc. But with no chance to rehearse it, because really we were the coverage was so intense that what happened was Sue's programme would finish at 1 minute to 7. She'd run out the chair, I'd run in, you stick an earpiece in, you stick a mic on, you look at the camera, and you go. There was no other studios to do it in, so it was quite something from that. And there were so many mistakes. I queued into the opening montage one, and it didn't even run. And I was just staring at the camera thing. So you carry on talking and things like that, but it was real seats of your pants stuff on occasions, but because we were all doing so well and winning so many gold medals, no one cared. And
one thing I remember, your World Cup days, the players always used to say, well, we don't know what the atmosphere is like back home. The athletes in London 2012 were able to experience that firsthand, but they also had Twitter for that as well.
Yeah. Well, Twitter was amazing during the Olympics, for bringing you up to speed with everything that was going on. I was fully into it was pretty intense anyway, being there and part of it, but it was great for that. It was interesting during broadcasts. Most of the time it's fine, and people are going, they'll comment on you, and a lot of people will have their say on whether they like it or whether they don't. But when you make a mistake on air, boy, do you know about it quickly. Right. I don't know how many people I interviewed over those 2 weeks, but there was lots and lots of different sports. I remember one night I had 9 separate interviews, sometimes one person, sometimes 2. And I think I got to about the 8th interview, and I thought, there's 4 people there, and I'm not quite sure who they are. It was mind-blowing. But one night that I was put into the Olympic Stadium, the night that Usain Bolt won the 100 metres, and I interviewed two of the gymnasts that won, and I got one of their names wrong, and I didn't realise I'd done it. Right. And I remember finishing the interview. Thanks, guys. I went back, sat down, and I was waiting for the next event. I thought, I'll have a little look at Twitter. It was like, you idiot, you stupid, how can you do your homework? And so, oh, crikey. So I put out but it was a chance to put out a quick apology to that. And then I got hold of the lad and said, I'm really sorry. It was Max Whitlock, it was the gymnast, and I called him Max Hastings, who was a journalist, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right.
Because it'd just gone in my head, their names. But I must admit, it made me feel sick.
Yeah. Well,
because you don't want to get someone's name wrong.
You've put it right here today, so apologies to Max.
Is he here?
Final question from me, and then I think Tony's going to give us some questions from the floor. My last question, I mentioned about I'd love to get Gaza using Twitter. Who would be your person, either alive or dead, who you would love to get using Twitter?
Yeah. It's funny, I've been asked this before, and I've thought about a few different people, but if I had to pick one, I think would be amazing would be someone like Brian Clough.
Okay.
He was such an unbelievably brilliant manager, and his achievements were incredible, but he was also so funny and sharp and pointed. I think he would have been great, and I only mention him because it brings me actually a nice story possibly to finish as well, is that I nearly played for him. Well, I didn't nearly play for him, but I could have played for him once, way back. I spent 3 years at Barcelona, from 86 to 89. You put that picture up again. Look a bit fat on that picture. From 86 to 89. And during the latter stages, I played for Johan Cruyff, who was the manager, and I was injured for the first 4. Well, I wasn't injured, I was ill. I had hepatitis, and I couldn't play until November. And you were only allowed 2 foreign players in those days, and by the time I got back, it was quite clear that Cruyff wanted me out, because he wanted his own 2 foreign players, which was quite normal and quite understandable. So he started playing me on the wing to try and mess me about so that I'd take umbrage and mess about. So, but in the end, I just, carried on, being professional, played, and towards the end of the season, it came obvious I would have to go, because I wanted to play back up front again. But it was questionable where I would go, and it went right to the end of the season. We had a post-season friendly with Denmark away, and I always roomed with Peter Shilton. And the night before the game, we're in the room, or actually he was in the room, I was sitting on the loo. It's another one of those stories. Not quite though. But I was sitting on the loo and the phone went, and Peter Shilton picks up. Now Peter Shilton was the most unbelievably confident bloke you've ever met. But he sounded like he was in awe of whoever was on the phone. And I thought, who's he talking to? So I heard him say, 1 minute, he's just on the loo, I'll get him. So he shouted at me, Links. I said, oh, yeah, 1 minute, I'll just do what I've got to do and I'll be with you. So anyway, I did what I had to do and I came out into the bedroom and he covered the mouthpiece and he went, it's Brian Clough. So I thought, oh, Jesus Christ. So I've walked over, I've picked the phone up, I said, hello. He said, young man, have you washed your hands? So this is true. And this is absolutely true. Our conversation went, I said, yes, I have, Mr. Clough. Call me Brian. I said, okay, Brian. He said, tell me, are you signed, sealed and delivered? I said, well, not yet. I've got 1 or 2 offers from different parts. He said, would you consider coming back to England? I said, well, I've certainly not ruled it out. It's, there's 1 or 2 English clubs have made a move. Would you consider coming to Nottingham Forest? I said, well, no, not really. Why not? I said, well, to be perfectly honest, Brian, if I come back to England, it'd have to be to one of the big clubs. Nottingham Forest is a big club. Nobody's won more than Nottingham Forest in the last 10 years. So I went, I'm fully aware of, your record and what you've achieved, I said. But when I meant, when I say a big club, I'm from Leicester, it's down the road from Nottingham. I meant, one of the big clubs with big grounds, and I was getting myself in more and more mess. I said, that's what I meant. He went, if you understand me. And he went, no, I don't. Call me Mr. Clough.
Great story to end on, as you said. So I think we've got some questions. Tweets. All right. So I'm going to put your modern day Gary back up for these. Okay. So here's a question from at J Dakin. Forgive me if I get the question wrong. Does Gary follow any brands on Twitter?
Well, I follow Walkers. Of course I do. And they follow me everywhere I go. Right around the country on a tractor. So yeah, I do follow 1 or 2 brands. I follow Virgin Trains because I get them every Saturday, and I follow British Airways. Yeah, probably a few more. Yeah.
At Liam Bennett asks, and you may have to explain the background to this one. I know the background, but not everyone will. How did you enjoy the Cardiff banner a few days ago? I saw you tweet this out.
Yeah, it was a brilliant picture. Cardiff City got promoted from the Championship to the Premier League just a couple of days ago, and there was it was made one of the something online. Actually, George sent me a picture that was on one of the newspapers online.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was a picture of thousands of fans with a banner, and it said, "Goodbye, Manish. Hello, Gary." So it's Manish who presents the Championship show, and I present Match of the Day. So I sort of retweeted that. It was a nice touch.
So you're popular in Wales at the moment?
I don't think I've ever had a banner in Wales that was pleasant before. But now I've got a Welsh wife now, so that might have something to do with it.
Yeah. Okay, best question so far here. At David J.
Don't you find it funny now that if you see people that you follow on Twitter, you want to call them at?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you want to call me at Lewis Wiltshire?
Yeah.
No.
At Lewis.
Yeah. At
really
David J. L. Norris asks, who would win, Piers Morgan or Joey Barton in a mud wrestle?
I think I know who would win that, and I would love to see it. I blocked Joey Barton. He's particularly rude to me on there on occasion, so I actually blocked him.
All right.
I don't miss him. That's a great thing, that block button. Glad you've got it.
Okay, so on the subject of the block button, at Rory Petty asks, attitude to trolls and internet anonymity.
Well, I guess it's a bit of a bugbear for Twitter. It's one of the issues that is pretty constant. I suppose particularly perhaps for people in the public eye, because it's quite easy to be a bully on Twitter. You're hidden behind a keyboard, and you get a lot of people on it. it's quite interesting how to use, but the nice thing sometimes, I think it's a bit of a conundrum for someone on there that you might get quite a bit of abuse, and it's you have to say as well, it's just a very, very tiny minority, but every now and again, someone would be particularly abusive, whether it's racist or whatever it is, and you always have that dilemma about whether to retweet it or not. And sometimes I have, and sometimes I've just blocked them. A lot of the times I just block them because you sort of know really that they're probably 17-year-old kids, bored, sitting at home, or they're out with a few of their mates having a drink. Who can we wind up tonight? But sometimes they probably forget that people do have feelings. And you know damn well if you ever met them in the street, they wouldn't, they'd be nothing but probably polite. So it's a difficult one. But the interest, sometimes they'll abuse you in such a way that gives you a chance to add just a few words to put them away a little bit. In a nice way is the way that I try and do it. But what happens then is that there's a wave of people that want to jump in and tell them how idiotic they are. So basically your followers will do it for you. But there are some desperately bad people, but it's a reflection of society, I suppose. There's always going to be a few rotters.
I've seen you deal with it with real humour, though.
Well, I think that's the way I try and do it. Because, to be perfectly honest, do they really upset me? No.
Yeah.
No. But at the same time, I've seen some things written on there that are just, just really wrong.
Okay. How does Gary feel? This is from Lee. How does Gary feel about footballers using Twitter? Positive or negative effect?
Well, I think, again, if it's used wisely, it can be a great vehicle and a great tool. I mean, there's a lot spoken about nowadays, isn't there, about, because the ridiculous amounts that footballers are paid, how distanced they are from their fans. Well, can they really say that about the ones that are on Twitter that are engaging? As long as they use it in that manner, that they do engage a little bit, and it's not just... I think, it can bring footballers actually closer to their supporters than perhaps would otherwise be the case. I've seen people argue that footballers should be concentrating on their sport and not being involved in Twitter. I don't personally see that as any sort of argument. You're not going to be doing it at half time or anything like that. The problem for many footballers, I feel, is if you have a bad game, you're going to be on the receiving end, and on those circumstances, I suggest probably not looking at Twitter on that particular evening, because there's nothing more passionate than football supporters. They take it so seriously. It's a lot of the most important thing in their lives to a lot of them. So, but I think there's so many examples of footballers that use it well. I follow quite a few of them. Gareth Bale, I think, starting to use it quite well now, sensibly. Michael Owen, I've followed a long time. He's very good. Vincent Kompany is excellent, really intelligent man. There are other players as well. Ferdinand's used it over the years. He's built up a big following. He's probably become a bigger star than he would have been otherwise, and his profile's bigger than it would have been otherwise. He's only a centre half.
Okay, penultimate question. This is from Alex Farber. Would Gary like to see Match of the Day make more use of Twitter, and in what ways? Well,
interestingly, we are. I don't know whether you've noticed, but we're now running tweets from players that have played that day along the bottom of the screen. The BBC is still slightly nervous about putting, say, our Twitter addresses that do actually go on Twitter on the programme, which most channels do now, don't they? If you watch the news or on ITV or Sky, you always see people's Twitter addresses on there, whereas the BBC is still a little bit reluctant if it's not an official BBC logo. So I'd like to see him perhaps do that. I'll get a few more followers. But we're definitely incorporating more. You've only got to watch the show, and they'll go through at the bottom during the time we're chatting, because that's boring, obviously. So much better reading the tweets than listening to Hanson.
And then final question. And then we'll bring this to a close. This is from @Drew@Rocket. Have you ever given in to the urge of deleting a tweet after tweeting? Interesting one.
I've deleted a few over the time. usually if I've spelt something wrong and I suddenly notice it, and I can't stand that, I hate that. Or I've done a couple where I've tweeted and then maybe some people, I've got a few replies, I might have seen a few replies, and they might have taken it the wrong way. Right. And we all know that whenever you write something in so few characters, it can be taken the wrong way, the meaning not the same. So I'll quickly delete it and perhaps rewrite it in a way that's more obvious. I can see what they meant, and I'll go, oh crikey, yeah. So yeah, I've deleted a few.
But in general, your advice would be to think about it before you...
The one thing I always do that. My rules to myself are, after I've written a tweet, I'll read it, normally to check the grammar and the spelling, because otherwise Piers Morgan will be straight on that case. To check that, and then if I have the slightest reservation, even the slightest, I won't tweet it. That's the way I work, because obviously, I mean, it's fine for most people, but you know, you're there to be shot at, and you've got to. That's. You know, would you say it on a TV program? You know, would you want it written in a newspaper? That's the things you've got to think about before I tweet, personally.
Okay, well, even if we haven't got 1.5 million followers, that's probably good advice for all of us as well. So thank you, Gary, for that, and thank you for joining us today. Gary Lineker, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks.